Hey, welcome. There's this one line of poetry that asks a question we still grapple with today. What's the real meaning of a glorious life? Well, the answer comes from this quiet, scholarly poet who happened to be standing at the exact turning point between two huge literary ages. His work would pretty much change how we think about fame, legacy, and believe it or not, the beauty of just an ordinary life.
So let's just jump right in with it. This is the line from Thomas Gray's masterpiece, Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. I mean, wow. It just gets right to the core of the human experience, doesn't it? It suggests that no matter how much power, or wealth, or fame you get, the end is the same for every single one of us.
And that line forces you to ask a question that feels so incredibly modern. What's the point of all this ambition if we all meet the same end? It's a real challenge to how we think about what a legacy is and what actually matters. So let's meet the man who framed this universal truth so perfectly.
All right, let's get to know Thomas Gray. He wasn't just a poet, he was basically a bridge between two entirely different worlds of thought and expression. A true poet of transition.
Gray lived a pretty quiet, academic life for the most part, but it was really punctuated by these key moments. His fancy education definitely shaped his mind, but it was a personal tragedy, the death of his close friend Richard West in 1742, that truly shaped his heart. And that loss, that grief, became the emotional seed for his masterpiece, a seed that was planted almost a decade before it would finally bloom.
Now, this is what makes Gray so fascinating. He's what we call a transitional poet. The best way to think of him is as someone standing with one foot on one side of a bridge and one foot on the other. He was writing with all the discipline and structure of the past, but he was feeling with the raw emotion and individualism of the future. It's that mix that makes his work just so powerful.
And you can see that divide right here. The Augustan age, the world he came from, was all about logic and strict formal rules. But Gray's poetry started to pump that old structure full of deep, personal emotion and a focus on nature. And those are the key ingredients of the Romantic era that was just around the corner. He was literally pioneering a new way to feel on the page.
Okay, so all of this, the grief, the transitional style, it all comes together in his most famous work. Let's really break down the masterpiece that cemented his legacy, the Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard.
And see, this poem wasn't just some abstract idea he plucked out of thin air. It was rooted in a real place. Gray was inspired by the quiet, thoughtful vibe of this churchyard in Stoke Poges. He was literally looking at the simple graves of forgotten villagers and just started thinking, really thinking, about the lives they must have lived.
And the way he built this meditation is just, wow, it's so precise. The entire poem is made of 32 quatrains, these perfectly balanced four-line stanzas. And that consistent, predictable rhythm is totally intentional. It creates this solemn, almost hypnotic feeling, kind of like the slow, steady toll of a church bell that just pulls you deeper and deeper into his thoughts on life and death. At its very core, the poem is contrasting two kinds of lives. On one side, you've got the great and the powerful, the ones chasing down those paths of glory. And on the other, you have the humble villagers, living these lives of simple joys and quiet struggles. But here's Gray's radical idea. Their final fate, the grave, is exactly the same. He was finding a profound, incredible dignity in the lives of the people nobody ever celebrated. This is another one of his most beautiful and, honestly, heartbreaking lines. Gray is basically saying that countless, talented, wonderful people live and die without anyone ever noticing, like a beautiful flower blooming in the middle of a desert where no one's around to see it. It's such a powerful defense of the worth of every single human life, whether it's seen or unseen.
But here's the thing. If we only focus on the elegy, we're really missing the full picture. Gray was no one-hit wonder. His talent evolved in some really dramatic ways throughout his career. So let's take a look at his poetic progress beyond that famous churchyard.
You can really break his career down into three distinct phases. First, he starts with these quiet, thoughtful poems about nature and nostalgia. Then, he moves into this grander, much more ambitious second period, writing these complex odes about the history and power of poetry itself. But what's really wild is his final period. He got super experimental, exploring ancient Norse myths and even writing sharp political satire. I mean, think about that range, from a quiet meditation on a flower to a fierce poem about Viking destiny. Incredible. So, when you boil it all down, what's his ultimate legacy? Well, Gray mastered these classic forms, like the ode and the elegy, but then he filled them with something brand new, a blend of his own personal feelings and these huge universal truths. He made it clear that the lives of ordinary people were a subject worthy of great art, and in doing that, he really helped kick off the whole age of Romanticism.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to that central theme. Gray's elegy is really pushing us to look past the flashy paths of glory and to see the value in the lives that so often go unnoticed. Which leaves us with a final, really important question to think about. In our own world, today, whose unseen life and quiet dignity deserves to